Good morning, and thank you for coming today. During the State of City address, I had made one statement which kind of went by, but I thought it was an important statement. What I had said was, if you read all the newspapers, if you look at especially the urban states in New York or across this country, whether it's California or right here in New York, that the next big crisis facing America today will be the systematic failure of its cities. And that is a very bold statement, but that is something that you will see, and especially in the next coming months, something that will become evident and real across America and evident and real in our state. For the last 2 months, I've been looking at the city's finances, and it's been quite an eye-opening experience. Just looking back over the last decade or so, Yonkers had a surplus, and then the city started running budgets, what they call deficit budgets. Budgets where there wasn't the real financing to back it up. It was backed up with partial one-shots. The backup of what was the surplus, the backup of one-shots from Albany, the spin-up aid, the education aid, one-shots, the backup of a $300 million settlement, desegregation settlement, that money come and gone. The backup of even the sale of the public library to itself, which meant about $20 million, and that was put into the operating revenue of the city. Kick the can down the road, and there's no more road left. This year alone, $17.2 million in pension costs, $14.5 million more than likely in what we will call certiorarities. That's paying for yesterday's lunch today. Or that's having our grandchildren pay for yesterday's lunch. That's what it really is. So we've kicked the can down the road, or we've kicked the lunch down the road for far too long. And we are going to have to tell the truth to the people that we represent as to where this city is currently, and in that truth will be the only way that we will be able to find out how we can remedy the truth, how we can remedy it. What I am going to ask is for an independent commission of inquiry into the finances of the city of Yonkers. And I've asked our former Lieutenant Governor, Dick Ravitz, to be a part of this, along with former Assemblyman, I almost said Gary Petlow, former Assemblyman Richard Brodsky, in coming in. Two people with a tremendous amount of experience. Dick Ravitz, as you know, his experience goes far beyond what he's done for New York State, going back to when he was instrumental in helping New York City bail out of its problems. Richard Brodsky, as you know, goes way back, representing this city for more than 2 decades, someone who actually wrote the second Control Board Act, or the first Control Board Act, and someone that we need. We have a $72 million budget deficit in the current fiscal year. Let me start all over again. We have a $72 million budget deficit for the next current fiscal year. And that is going to be a monumental task for us as the City Council, working with the mayor, along with our labor unions, to try and to achieve. We need to have everyone working together, but in order for us to do that, we need to have the expertise of a Dick Ravitz and a Richard Brodsky, along with this commission, to help us help us uncover the truth, deal with the issues that are facing the city, because as mayor and as a city council, our responsibility is to make sure that our children get an education. Our responsibility is to make sure that the quality of life is sustained in the city with police, fire, sanitation, and of course, the operation of our city. But we cannot do this, both short-term or long-term, unless we come to terms with the problems facing our community with this budget. So with that, I'm going to ask Lieutenant Governor Dick Ravitz to come up and say a few words about the commission. Thank you.
I met the mayor when he and I were in Albany a couple of years ago. He was always curious, interested, open-minded. We chatted about the fiscal problems that the state was facing at the time. And when he asked me recently if I could help try to figure out what the options were for the city of Yonkers, I said I'd be glad to help. And he, like a few other local officials around the state, are reaching out for help because the problems are not unique to Yonkers. These kinds of problems beset every major city in the state of New York, and indeed, as the mayor said, maybe other states as well. So what we're going to try to do is to come up with the most, as he said, the truth, the honest explanation of exactly where the city is with respect to its revenues and expenditures, to identify for the public with great clarity which of the revenues are real and recurring and which of the expenses are real and recurring, and what is the growth path. Is this a problem that will be solved if mercifully we come out of the economic doldrums that we're in today? Or is the disparity in the growth of expenditures, particularly retirement benefits, outdistancing the rate of growth of revenues no matter what? So in an effort to do that, to help the mayor and the council, obviously, and the people understand what the facts are, that's our major function. And to accomplish this function, we're going to use the professional services of, amongst others, Carol O'Clerican, former New York City budget director, one of the smartest budget people I've ever known in 35 years, who on a professional basis is going to assist and work with the very able local officials to help us come up with this report that the mayor's asked for. And I would like to say that there's no simple answer. There are no magic bullets. We're not going to discover anything that is either going to instantly solve the problem. Any solution to this problem ultimately involves pain for somebody. We all know that. And in our system of government, that's a set of political decisions that the mayor and the council are going to have to make ultimately. But at least they want to know what the truth is, and they don't want to pretend that if they can sell an asset or borrow a little money, that the problem's going to go away. And I respect them enormously for that. So that's it.
Senator Ross. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My former colleagues in the legislative process. The city's problems are real. The crafting of solutions first requires that we agree on what our situation is. That will require us to, at the instruction of the mayor, to determine the fiscal circumstances of the city and to talk to the public about it. The problems are real. I came to this through the prism of my own work in this very room, writing the Control Board Act of 1983, 84, and through working to improve the fiscal situation of the city for all of that time. I have found that the people of the city understand reality. They're smart, they care, they have a mayor who is smart and cares, and the first thing we're going to do is get to the bottom of a lot of things. I would point out that the scope of the inquiry is to organizations that are affiliated with the city as well, because the budget that the mayor will have to produce will have to deal with things like the parking authority, which went from a surplus to a deficit, to the problem with pilot payments, where apparently many of the pilot payments that are due the city are in default. Those are the kinds of broadly looked at fiscal and policy issues that we're gonna tell the truth about as the mayor said, I'm delighted to be working with Dick Ravitch, who is an extraordinary voice for sanity in the fiscal arena, and with Carol O'Clerican, who comes from a very strong fiscal background and experience with the labor community and others. And I expect that we will flesh out the details of this process in the next few days and go to work as quickly as we can. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Council President Chuck Lesser.
On behalf of the council, Majority Leader Wilson Torero, Mike Sabatino, and the other council members who couldn't be here today, I want to applaud Mayor Spano for taking a bold step here. There are no two people in Albany the last 2 decades that were more thoughtful and independent and sometimes blunt than the two Richards, Ravitch and Brodsky, both of whom represented this city in their tenures tenaciously. They fought with us and alongside us. And I know we're going to be getting an honest, independent, knowledgeable feedback so that we as policymakers can operate with evidence-based policy based on facts. And Carol's technical skills are well known, and we thank you for lending your talents to the city of Yonkers.
Thank you. And before I open up to questions, one important point. It took us many years for the city to be in this position. It's probably going to take a multi-year approach for us to get out of this. We're not looking for a Band-Aid. We're not looking for a quick fix. What we're looking for is a rational and deliberate and what I hope will be an effective way of us moving this city forward and out of the tough fiscal times ahead. It will not be impossible. We can do it. We're all going to have to work together. So if anybody has any questions, I open up the questions. Yes.
I guess the obvious one is, why do you need outside people as opposed to your own fiscal experts on the city payroll?
As you know, Richard and Dick won't be getting paid. But the reason that we have them is because if you look at their history, they're two individuals who have been quite helpful at many, in New York City, in Yonkers, in New York State, on both their parts, in helping us through some very tough travel through some very tough fiscal waters. And I'm looking to them for their expertise. I'm looking for them to be honest and open with the taxpayers of the city, so that out of that honesty and that openness and that truth will come a plan for us to resolve the fiscal issues, the fiscal ills that face the city.
Do you think that if you were to do it strictly in-house, there might be too much political pressure to go one way or the other?
I think, John, frankly the problem is huge. And I think that it's going to require their expertise along with the commitment. And I have no doubt this council is committed. I know our labor force is committed. And I frankly know that the people of Yonkers understand and are committed to our future. This is another set of eyes which is going to help us.
Is there a time frame that you'd like to see some preliminary information coming back?
Sure, we want to release our budget on time by the 15th, and so I'd like to at least have some type of response from the commission before that. 15th of April, sorry.
What's the goal of the commission? Is it simply to go back through and chart the city's fiscal issues, or to come up with a blueprint going forward that you can follow?
Let's start with the truth and tell us where we are today. Yes.
In your remarks just now, and also in the State of the City speech, you mentioned, I think, what you call irresponsible gimmicks in the past. And you specified a couple, but I was wondering if you could briefly maybe elaborate on some of the more prominent ones.
Yeah, what I talked about was the spin-ups. And as you know, we at the state level made to many of the cities across the state what they call spin-up. Basically, it's getting next week's paycheck this week. And that spin-up allowed the cities to operate on this one-time dollar. The state did it with spin-up with education. They did spin-up with municipal aid. Then, of course, the city was in a desegregation order where the city received $300 million. Some of that money was used to help offset operating costs. The city sold its library here in the waterfront to itself and used 20 million of its operating dollars, 20 million of those dollars as operating dollars. That's, like I said, that's basically borrowing for yesterday's lunch, which is not something we all do at home, but certainly something that is happening here.
Michael, may I?
Yes.
Only this, the mayor inherited a set of circumstances which include things that are happening right now. They're not just historical. In the current year, the total borrowing for operating expenses for certiораries and for pension costs is over $30 million in cash. Those are monies that are going to have to be paid out, as Mike says, for yesterday's lunch over the next 10 to 20 years. That sort of reality is what's facing him, and it's our job to identify the scope and the depth of those gimmicks and to let the council and the mayor work out whatever remedies they choose.
The other gimmick we're going to look at is the IDA. The IDA, as you know, allowed what they call spin-up of pilot payments in lieu of taxes. So where Yonkers Raceway or Ridge Hill paid next year's taxes for the current budget year. That compounding our problems because we didn't make any cuts to offset those expenditures, and now we are stuck with those same expenditures and the lack of those tax dollars. Yes.
This made you think that the looking for the truth will find any wrongdoing, and if so, is that part of the purview?
No, that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for, and I think if you look at history will show that it didn't matter if you were a Republican or a Democrat, all are complicit in this. What we are looking for and what the taxpayers want are individuals, and I know the council working with feels the same way, individuals who will come up with solutions. We can't get to those solutions unless we know the truth.
There have been situations the last few years of pilfering, of people taking gas, salt from the salt shed, et cetera, et cetera. Is that type of loss to the city some of the things that be looked at, whether or not there's controls over, your maintaining of records?
John, as you know, we are going out of our way, above and beyond, to look and put in safeguards on all those issues, whether it was what happened with the salt or what's going on with our car policy. We eliminated 40 cars. The fact is that those items are not going to solve a $72 million budget deficit, but we are looking at them and we are paying attention to them, and it's important because the taxpayers deserve to have that type of protection. I meant from the standpoint of looking at the controls that the city has over how its supplies and equipment is used. Is that something that you say falls under this? Well, I'll tell you why, and I think this might answer your question. Over the years, one of the places where past administrations have cut has been the Office of Budget. So much to the point that there was basically one person who was left to oversee a $930 million budget. That was insane. We're in the process of trying to rebuild that office because having a good budget office helps keep costs like that and abuses like that in check. And I think when I mentioned that to the Lieutenant Governor, he squinted his eyes at me like, "Are you kidding me? Are you serious?" And I said, "No, I'm not. We don't have that check and balance, but we will under this administration."
Yes. Just to be clear, you said we're looking for the truth, but then you said wrongdoing is not what we're looking for. Let's say they come across.
Well, listen, if they come across wrongdoing, obviously that's we have a responsibility to the public to expose that wrongdoing. I don't want this to look like an inquiry into wrongdoing. This is an inquiry into our financial situation facing the people of Yonkers. Right. Thank you.